The president has now arrived on the campus of George Washington University, and you can see the Vice President, Joe Biden, there. He's obviously arrived as well. They're sitting down. They're getting ready for the president to be introduced. I believe we'll get a 2-minute warning and then we'll be able to know exactly when the president's walking in. But he's there on the campus at George Washington University. He'll be speaking momentarily. Gloria Borger, after the Bowles-Simpson Commission that the president created came out with their recommendations in December, why didn't the president embrace those recommendations, or at least at that point say, here are my improvements on them?
I don't think he wanted to take the political risk.
Hold on, Gloria. Hold on a second, because the president has now just been introduced. So he's getting a little standing ovation over there. So we'll listen to the president. He's going to ask everybody to sit down. Here's the president.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Please have a seat, everyone. It is wonderful to be back at GW. I want you to know that one of the reasons that I worked so hard with Democrats and Republicans to keep the government open was so that I could show up here today. I want to make sure that all of you had one more excuse to skip class. You're welcome. I want to give a special thanks to Stephen Knapp, the president of GW. I just saw him. Where is he? There he is, right there. We've got a lot of distinguished guests here. A couple of people I want to acknowledge. First of all, my outstanding Vice President, Joe Biden, is here. Our Secretary of the Treasury, Tim Geithner, is in the House. Jack Lew, the Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Gene Sperling, Chair of the National Economic Council, is here. Members of our bipartisan Fiscal Commission are here, including the two outstanding chairs, Erskine Bowles and Alan Simpson are here. And we have a number of members of Congress here today. I'm grateful for all of you taking the time to attend. What we've been debating here in Washington over the last few weeks will affect the lives of the students here and families all across America in potentially profound ways. This debate over budgets and deficits is about more than just numbers on a page. It's about more than just cutting and spending. It's about the kind of future that we want. It's about the kind of country that we believe in. And that's what I want to spend some time talking about today. From our first days as a nation, we have put our faith in free markets and free enterprise as the engine of America's wealth and prosperity. And more than citizens of any other country, we are rugged individualists, a self-reliant people with a healthy skepticism of too much government. But there's always been another thread running through our history, a belief that we're all connected, and that there are some things we can only do together as a nation. We believe, in the words of the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, that through government we should do together what we cannot do as well for ourselves. And so we've built a strong military to keep us secure, and public schools and universities to educate our citizens. We've laid down railroads and highways to facilitate travel and commerce. We've supported the work of scientists and researchers whose discoveries have saved lives, unleashed repeated technological revolutions, and led to countless new jobs and entire new industries. Each of us has benefited from these investments, and we're a more prosperous country as a result. Now, part of this American belief that we're all connected also expresses itself in a conviction that each one of us deserves some basic measure of security and dignity. We recognize that no matter how responsibly we live our lives, hard times or bad luck, a crippling illness or a layoff may strike any one of us. There, but for the grace of God, go I, we say to ourselves. And so we contribute to programs like Medicare and Social Security, which guarantee us health care and a measure of basic income after a lifetime of hard work. Unemployment insurance, which protects us against unexpected job loss. And Medicaid, which provides care for millions of seniors in nursing homes, poor children, those with disabilities. We're a better country because of these commitments. I'll go further. We would not be a great country without those commitments. Now, for much of the last century, our nation found a way to afford these investments and priorities with the taxes paid by its citizens. As a country that values fairness, wealthier individuals have traditionally borne a greater share of this burden than the middle class or those less fortunate. Everybody pays, but the wealthier have borne a little more. This is not because we begrudge those who've done well. We rightly celebrate their success. Instead, it's a basic reflection of our belief that those who've benefited most from our way of life can afford to give back a little bit more. Moreover, this belief hasn't hindered the success of those at the top of the income scale. They continue to do better and better with each passing year. Now, at certain times, particularly during war or recession, our nation has had to borrow money to pay for some of our priorities. And as most families understand, a little credit card debt isn't going to hurt if it's temporary. But as far back as the 1980s, America started amassing debt at more alarming levels. And our leaders began to realize that a larger challenge was on the horizon. They knew that eventually the baby boom generation would retire, which meant a much bigger portion of our citizens would be relying on programs like Medicare, Social Security, and possibly Medicaid. Like parents with young children who know they have to start saving for the college years, America had to start borrowing less and saving more to prepare for the retirement of an entire generation. To meet this challenge, our leaders came together 3 times during the 1990s to reduce our nation's deficit. 3 times. They forged historic agreements that required tough decisions made by the first President Bush, then made by President Clinton, by Democratic Congresses, and by a Republican Congress. All 3 agreements asked for shared responsibility and shared sacrifice. But they largely protected the middle class. They largely protected our commitment to seniors. They protected our key investments in our future. As a result of these bipartisan efforts, America's finances were in great shape by the year 2000. We went from deficit to surplus. America was actually on track to becoming completely debt-free. And we were prepared for the retirement of the baby boomers. But after Democrats and Republicans committed to fiscal discipline during the 1990s, we lost our way in the decade that followed. We increased spending dramatically for 2 wars and an expensive prescription drug program. But we didn't pay for any of this new spending. Instead, we made the problem worse with trillions of dollars in unpaid-for tax cuts. Tax cuts that went to every millionaire and billionaire in the country. Tax cuts that will force us to borrow an average of $500 billion every year over the next decade. To give you an idea of how much damage this caused to our nation's checkbook, consider this. In the last decade, if we had simply found a way to pay for the tax cuts and the prescription drug benefit, our deficit would currently be at low historical levels in the coming years. But that's not what happened. And so by the time I took office, we once again found ourselves deeply in debt and unprepared for a baby boom retirement that is now starting to take place. When I took office, our projected deficit annually was more than $1 trillion. On top of that, we faced a terrible financial crisis and a recession that, like most recessions, led us to temporarily borrow even more. In this case, we took a series of emergency steps that saved millions of jobs, kept credit flowing, and provided working families extra money in their pocket. It was absolutely the right thing to do. But these steps were expensive and added to our deficits in the short term. So that's how our fiscal challenge was created. That's how we got here. And now that our economic recovery is gaining strength, Democrats and Republicans must come together and restore the fiscal responsibility that served us so well in the 1990s. We have to live within our means. We have to reduce our deficit, and we have to get back on a path that will allow us to pay down our debt. And we have to do it in a way that protects the recovery, protects the investments we need to grow, creates jobs, and helps us win the future. Now, before I get into how we can achieve this goal, some of you, particularly the younger people here, you don't qualify, Joe. Some of you might be wondering, why is this so important? Why does this matter to me? Well, here's why. Even after our economy recovers, our government will still be on track to spend more money than it takes in throughout this decade and beyond. That means we'll have to keep borrowing more from countries like China. That means more of your tax dollars each year will go towards paying off the interest on all the loans that we keep taking out. By the end of this decade, the interest that we owe on our debt could rise to nearly $1 trillion. Think about that. That's the interest, just the interest payments. Then, as the baby boomers start to retire in greater numbers and healthcare costs continue to rise, the situation will get even worse. By 2025, the amount of taxes we currently pay will only be enough to finance our healthcare programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the interest we owe on our debt. That's it. Every other national priority, education, transportation, even our national security, will have to be paid for with borrowed money. Now, ultimately, all this rising debt will cost us jobs and damage our economy. It will prevent us from making the investments we need to win the future. We won't be able to afford good schools, new research, or the repair of roads. All the things that create new jobs and businesses here in America. Businesses will be less likely to invest and open shop in a country that seems unwilling or unable to balance its books. And if our creditors start worrying that we may be unable to pay back our debts, that could drive up interest rates for everybody who borrows money, making it harder for businesses to expand and hire or families to take out a mortgage. Here's the good news. That doesn't have to be our future. That doesn't have to be the country that we leave our children. We can solve this problem. We came together as Democrats and Republicans to meet this challenge before. We can do it again. But that starts by being honest about what's causing our deficit. You see, most Americans tend to dislike government spending in the abstract, but like the stuff that it buys. Most of us, regardless of party affiliation, believe that we should have a strong military and a strong defense. Most Americans believe we should invest in education and medical research. Most Americans think we should protect commitments like Social Security and Medicare. And without even looking at a poll, my finely honed political instincts tell me that almost nobody believes they should be paying higher taxes.